Hello there and welcome back to Calypso Song Sounds. Today we're going to be spending some time in World of Warcraft. This here is my priest. She seems about as sleepy as I hope you are. It's going to be not so much a gameplay video or anything like that. We're going to actually focus on a very immersive aspect to this game called roleplay. I roleplay pretty extensively, but one of my favorite parts of roleplay is actually creating and fleshing out a character. All of that character's attributes, details, things like that. So within World of Warcraft, there is an add-on called Total Roleplay, which I use when I roleplay. Many people on my realm use it, and it's just kind of a neat glimpse into what the surface level presentation is for a character. So I'm going to read through a list of characters that I have created over the years. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to read through 8 different profiles that are all completely hashed out. So this first one that I'm going to read is my priest's, and her name is Leonie Calypson. She is a half-elf anatomist, so she's a scientist of sorts. 31, her eye color is silver. She's about 5 feet 8 inches. Her body shape is willowy or cadaverous, so very skinny, almost malnourished even. Her birthplace was Corrin's Crossing, which was in Lordaeron before it fell. Her residence, I like to say it's a faraway hovel, and it's really a laboratory. She's a widow. She's a stoic disposition on her face. She's pronounced Leonie. Her alignment is lawful evil. Her temperament is INTJA, so she's a mastermind. And then down here it kind of scales to what each personality trait is. So she is more intellectual than not, more spiteful than benevolent. She's more of a renegade than she is a paragon, so she's sort of on her own. So I'm going to go to About and read through what I've done with her profile. So Leonie Calypson, and her quote is, "Where priesthood fails, science prevails." Leonie Calypson, MD. The account in which Leonie served as an upstanding priestess has been long forgotten. More aptly, here lies the account in which a Faustian scientist seeks to unravel the world's greatest affliction, death. Dr. Leonie Calypson is, in her own right, a scientist. This is made evident by the ad hoc laboratory consistently strapped to her person, a Gladstone bag with vials, a skull, and other apothecarial contents. When magic proves futile, Leonie resorts to combat. A long sheath fashioned to the appearance of a cane contains a sleek, silvery rapier. Tucked within a strap secured to her right thigh dwells a Basso revolver, 6.35 millimeters. Her lithe stature does well to spark surprise upon her opposers when met with such armaments. A haunt does exist with her name, and it is a place she finds respite from cityscape glamour. With her own gray matter for death, cadaverous parts furnish her otherwise desolate haven. This is, of course, the basement. The main level, however, serves as her place of practice. A surgeon and general medical practitioner, she still adheres to her civic duty to the public. She doesn't prefer chatter. In fact, she'll abide by what I coined myself, the Lordaeronian farewell. resulting in her own prompt, unannounced dismissal. Adding to this, practicality reigns over vanity. Clean, crisp regalia woven in dark colors make up the majority of her wardrobe. Flaxen hair starkly contrasts with the sable hues, but she minds it little. So that's what I have written to describe Leone in a longer sense. She's got some glances, which I like to put in here. So here's some details. Her first glance, which means what you would notice when you first walk up to Leone. And this one's called A Few Necessities Intricately Crafted. Cerulean and retractable, a pair of spectacles veils her stormy gaze. Albeit no evidence limp, Leone keeps a cane secured to her hip, the thing serving as a sheath for a long silvery rapier. Its tip maintains a memento mori orb. Basu revolver, 6.35 millimeters, dwells in a strap deftly fashioned to her right thigh. So, she's got a few bits and bobs about her, largely her glasses and her weaponry. Next one. Right thought is mastery. Emotions distract. Pallid features left unpainted reveal an emotionless countenance. Apathy well befits her Loderonian elocution, and she isn't one for simple chatter. The faintest tinge of elven nobility finds itself entwined within her demeanor, in addition to the small pointed ears hugging her flaxen crown. Third glance, a preceptor's wardrobe. Practicality before vanity. Clean, crisp regalia woven in dark colors make up the majority of her wardrobe. A Gladstone bag finds itself slung across her frame. Apothecarial reagents reside therein. Next one is gray matter for remedy, catering to life and death. A discerning eye for the adult, she will utter prescriptions and suggestions for one's well-being, and for those at death's door, other options galore. She keeps etchings in a little black notebook. Then her last glance, the witching hour, a dark dabbler. Surely witchery accompanies her in various forms, shadow, void, and perhaps necromancy. But that ought to remain silent, yes. Propriety remains even with the ever-stoic woman. Perhaps it's mere preservation. So, that's Leone. She's my favorite one to roleplay. This is her appearance. And I'm going to continue reading the other profiles on this character, but she's easily the most fun. She's my no-nonsense scientist. Okay, so next up on our list is Emoria Wire. She's a clerical bard, and she uses frost-tinged magic. She's a human light bearer, so I play her on a paladin. She's 35, her eye color is oceanic. She's 5 feet 7 inches. Her body shape is sylph-like, so more on the slender side. She was also born in Corin's Crossing, Lordaeron. And I like this because it's close to my name. But she currently resides in Elwyn Forest. She has a kind physiognomy, ruby earrings. Her occupations are healer, tradeswoman, musician, and she's neutral good. She's more benevolent than she is malevolent, and she's more of a layman than she is clergy, so even though she's a paladin, she doesn't work in a church. So far she is basically the complete opposite of Leone. So for her, and this is the YouTube, I made a poem instead of a narrative, and here's the poem I wrote for Emoria Wire. From darkness came light. The grim doth reap the promise of sorrow, a loss immeasurable. arisen on the morrow. The witching hour is no place for light, yet a golden maiden had vexed the blight. A pair so forlorn, lost in their madness, did a girl born, whom pierced a mother's sadness. An oath to piety, a fulfilling life, the light of clarity to end darkened strife. So, it's basically a beacon of light in dark times is Emoria Wire. And then for her glances, the first one is melodious. Finding respite in singing, her hums warm one's heart. There resides a somber nuance in her music, but it never ceases to lend hope. So she's a bard, and she sings. Next is enlightened. Her faith is the product of her willpower. Serving the light dutifully as any paladin may, she does not adhere to the philosophical teachings within the cathedral. She'd be damned to be found near any bishop or clergy. Hers is a devotion to the light and not to propriety. So, because she's a paladin, she has to adhere to the light, and she worships it, but she does not want to be within the cathedral, because she does not agree with the cathedral. The third glance is the frosted night. Honed by prayer and piety and practiced steel, Emoria fights with crystalline fractals reflecting from her use of the light. Her panoply exhibits a snowy mien that permeates with a similar chill. So even though she uses the light, she also uses kind of a frosty cryomancy magic. Next glance is gentle touch. Gilded fingertips softly descend on injuries and ailments to ensure a warm healing. Her faith has secured a strong foundation for remedying the wounded. So she's a healer. And lastly is meditative. Albeit pious to some degree, largely for her battle endeavors, Emoria treads the earth alone. Her elusive disposition may appear cold and dismissive, but once the chill is chipped away, she's a warm, compassionate being. So, she's very much a loner, but once you get to know her, she's quite sweet and kind. Okay, next on our list is Keita. Keita Everley. I like to say that she's an eclectic mess, or a brawl maiden, so she's very talented, but not exactly the most put together and organized woman. So she's a human fighter, so I know I play a high fantasy game, but my favorite race is human. She's in her 30s. She also has an oceanic eye color. She's 5 feet 8 inches. She's more muscled in her body shape because she's a brawl maiden. She was also born in Lordaeron, but she lives in an apartment in Old Town Stormwind. Her birthday is August 6th. She's a Leo. She has an ornery, kind of a taunting facial expression. Keita Everley. They say beauty is fleeting. It's a quote by her. They say beauty is fleeting. Keita naturally took this to heart. She can pack a punch as well as she can sustain one. Valorous certainly, and stubborn to the bone. A brawler and combatant, she never shied from a good fight. They wouldn't say she's in line for the next pin-up glamour shot, but she's still by no means plain. There's a certain charm to her wind-swept tresses and scar-speckled complexion. Some say her eyes rival the blue of the ocean, but that is at a passing glance and an author's fancy. An ocean's palette, a full ocean's palette, colors those irises. Her smile is contagious, making up for the muscled frame that deems intrusive in certain companies. Worry not, she won't use it against any good-natured Joe. Her hands have a keen way of putting a face to ruin or to beauty. In more polite company, she refers to herself as a painter, sculptor, and sketch artist. For those fortunate enough, she stares tactlessly with a few breaks to scribble in the line work of one's countenance. So even though she's a brawler, she's also a very exceptional artist. And then here's her glances. Northern native is the first one. Her elocution utters sentiments of a kingdom now fallen, a bit more on the gruff end of things, excuse me. Next is Sore Thumb. She's a product of wanderlust and curiosity. Every scar, bruise, and sullyment derives from questionable endeavors, all exhibited proudly. To note, often spotted in the Brawl Pub as a contestant. Next is Soft Spot. Weather worn like its master, albeit a respite from tumult, a sketchbook clings to her belt. It's accompanied by an array of writing utensils. Don't mind the twitches. Surely lucid and perfectly placed, an ill-fitted series of twitches indicate some form of recovery from a once addling substance. So, she used to partake in some illicit substances that she's now recovering from. Fresh air and jostled hair. Pine and petrichor perfectly accompany a disheveled mien. Vanity is nary found with this one. So, she's kind of a mess, but in an endearing way. Okay, our next one is going to be Clove. Okay, Clove Locklore is of the Night Watch, and she's a sentry. She's a locksmith's daughter, and she's a half-elf, so half human, half elf. She's a watcher, so she's a sentry of sorts. 28, she's got black sable eyes. She's 5 feet 8 inches. Her body shape is well knit, so kind of toned. She was born in Duskwood, and she lives in Darkshire, and they are both in the same area. She has a small owl beneath her left ear for a tattoo. She has a kind and wistful facial expression. She has several piercings along her ears. So, I did another poem for Clove. And so it says, skittering pebbles down the pathway, 'neath the footfalls of a woman who frayed, stitching of Herculean undead, Duskwood's plague of scourge and dread. A sentry's light scarcely shine upon the cobbles made in mind, for king and crown to protect the land before it's vexed by corruption's hand. A dutiful squire rises to be a hero of humble company. What little does Clove have to rend other than the darkness of this land's end? So, yep, that is, this first one kind of describes that when she's on her patrol, she's going down the Duskwood scourge-addled zone of sorts. And the corruption that laid on Duskwood with all of the undead that lurk there, the zombies and whatnot, and even the worgen. And then this last one is like, she is a dutiful squire, but pleasant company outside of her job. Okay, so some glances. The first one is keyed in. Living as a locksmith's daughter lends to the luxury of procured information. A perceptiveness dwells in her sable eyes. Locklore's grip is a commonly sought-after company for key-making and locksmithing. Next is for the people. Though stalwart on the front, Clove keeps a gentle disposition and casual company. Her alto timbre elicits a warm and comforting atmosphere. A sentry's sound. Chainmail grips to an athletic build, presenting a guard's insignia. She keeps watch for the crown, even through humble means. Fourth glance is oathed. It remains evident that she's no full human in spite of her allegiance to the Alliance faction. A human father is the only evidence of her background, and she isn't even sure the whereabouts of her Quel'Dorai mother. So Quel'Dorai is the type of elf that she is descended from. Slick like silver. A practiced swordswoman keeps a whetted blade, thusly sheathed to her hip. Her playful fluidity serves as a testament to her well-honed use of it. So, she's very good with her sword. Okay, next is going to be one of my favorites, and she is an elf. She is Inyue Withernook, and the first name is sort of a joke and named before her parents knew common, so Inyue sounds like in your way, but it's supposed to be funny. So she's named before her parents knew common, Fula the Nook, and a questionable preceptor, so she's a teacher of the arcane, but has unorthodox methods. So she's Quel'Dorai Arcanist, so it's a night elf for those of you who play WoW. She's a few 100 years old. Starry eyes. She's 6 feet 2 inches tall. Willowy body shape, so a bit skinny. She was born in Mount Hyjal. She has no place of residence currently. She just kind of wanders wherever there's a bed. She has light scarring across her face. Her nickname is Inya, or In Your Way, or Naya. Some piercings are speckled along her long ears. And her motto is, I keep off to the side most times, actually. So she's not in your way. Okay, so this one is more of an account, but it is a poem of sorts. Inyue Withernook, arcanist of unorthodox means, and named before her parents knew common. An ode to crying. The mishap of misspell, it is merely an ode to scrying. The joys of lobbing spell and cryomantic crying. One could simply amend the error of language above, but that is mere enchantment from a poshcaster's glove. Here we whisk the joys of happy wee accidents. Your classmate is a pile of gold. Ah, makes a mountain of sense. Never perfect are we magi in the midst of common classes. A panoply of present problems forms the promise of subsequent success. Professor Withernook on a particularly creative day to her novice students. So, I like to think that Inyue wrote that. Okay. Some glances, nooks and crannies. Books to the brim of her large loculus slung across her sylph-like frame scintillate with arcanic magic. She keeps her nose perched in one at nearly all idle moments. So, she loves her reading. Seasoned. She's no young spring chicken, but a fruitful life still awaits her. A pair of reading spectacles often slip down her angular nose, just enough for starry eyes to scrutinize what's before her. In spite of her experiential wisdom, she keeps a fairly clumsy disposition. Professor Withernook. An array of pupils gather round to engage in near-comedic lectures. Her methods prove unorthodox yet meaningful. Other professors upturn noses at her more liberal philosophies, and students internally battle between the old methods and Withernook's whimsy. So she's a little different in her teaching. Witherwinter. The presence of arcane marries the chill of cryomancy upon the elfin frame. But one knows the phrase, cold hands, warm heart, which greatly applies here. So, even though she dabbles in cryomancy, she's a very friendly and kind person. Withered wardrobe. Practicality best befits the globe-trotting preceptor, of which Inuwe adheres too staunchly. She's no mismatched mayhem, but she'll nearly be the next candidate for the elven vogue. So she's a very practical wardrobe. Okay, our next one is going to be Elira Hollowitch, Dr. Elira Hollowitch. And she is my second favorite character to roleplay. Poisonhead, Sawbones, Scholar, and Poisonhead is actually the definition of Hattercup, which is Anglo-Saxon English for spider. So, but I call her Poisonhead because she is a toxicologist of some sort. So she's half-elf, she's 30 years old, amber eyes, 5'7", willowy. So this is one of my favorite words, largely because I have a dog named Willow, so I use it when I can. Her birthplace is some dilapidated tavern, and her residence is her Hollowitch pharmacy. So I like to also roleplay, doctoral stuff. Her motto is kindness prevails only the first time. She's a mirthful facial expression. She has a right ear industrial piercing, left nostril stud, and the center of her bottom lip has a loop. Her tattoos are a memento mori paired with an hourglass just beneath her left collarbone. Okay. So, I did a little bit, and I'm going to minimize this just a bit. So, I did a mixture of description and also poetry. So, Poisonhead. There's little to be said in the way of history. Elira is the product of alcohol and accident, deeming her a lost soul in which she wanders the world. But that is of little detriment. Keen with blade and tongue, paired with the intellect of a scholar, she's done well to build a life in the underbelly of civilization. Confession of a Hollowitch. This thorn in my flesh, it wriggles deeply to my core. The bodies are fresh, lives made no more. The hunger for it, deathly sating, a witchery of wit and life regaining. Grey matter for healing to the wicked heart, when true life deems fleeting, a darkness doth impart. Cast a sable spell to surface the cadavers, winter time doth knell, necromancy alone matters. So, this is her confession of becoming a necromancer, which is a very frowned upon occupation. Some glances at her cup. Poisonhead. The melange of tinctures and toxins affixed to her belt indicate a dabbling in alchemy. The physician's insignia presents itself on her tabard, indicating an occupation in medicine and surgical procedures. Official licensure can be provided upon request. Delicate. This one is a bubbly sort with an odd perception of the world. She holds intrigue for the unsettling things of life, but presents an innocent facade. Nonetheless, kindness prevails, she believes, thusly preserved in her conversation. She's kind of an oddball, a friendly oddball. Third, envenomed. Although an approachable sort, Elira's weaponry maintains an imperceptible poison to common passers-by. Spellweavers, however, may discern the enchantment. Halved. No oath to grand factions, the elfin frame met with human features exhibits that of a half-elf. And lastly is augur. Darker dabblings tinge the arcanic entities within her. Unsanctioned in many places, Elira isn't quick to disclose her magical interests. Those with magical scrutiny may note traces of necromancy. So that is Elira Hollowitch. Our next one is going to be my original character, Lorelei Callan. So she's a human fence, which I think is very funny to think about because most people think of fences like gates, but a fence is somebody who does business exchanges with illegal goods. She's an eclectic specialist, 28, an emerald eye color. She's 5 feet 6 inches, an ectomorphic, so more slender frame. She was born in Red Ridge. Her nickname is Lay, and loosely red, because she has red hair, and she has a resting nice face. Her personality traits are affable rather than standoffish, canny rather than vacuous, so smart, and she's more persuasive than she is muddled. Lorelei Callan. There is much to be said in the way of reputation. Proprietor, thief, militant, philanthropist. Just shy of 3 decades, the woman's done more in her life than any common man. She's worn many faces, and many faces have sworn for her. The mask upon her curious countenance veils the only distinguished feature, a rosy scar. The epithet Lay is how most know her. She does well to hide neat noses with extravagant poses. For the curious-minded, the coterie of pickwickers is self-serving with the facade of scrupulous business. A few may be aware of said hubs. The Gilded Grotto, Rosehaven, and Petrichor, all serving different business things. Those with malefic hearts and dreams of avarice seek out the undermarket of pickwickers. Illumined by dim candlelight, here resides the most baleful of business. So she owns a large business chain of not exactly scrupulous dealings. Red Ridge Ragamuffin. Her homeland looms with damask mountains and small-town hospitality. Her gab is a gentle eastern elocution. Just a flesh wound. A reddish pathway trickles down her fair lips with a pool of scarring atop her collarbone. She often wears a mask to conceal the blemish. From her lips to the sea, a luminescent intonation paired with an alluring essence emits from ever-singing lips. Magical in nature, yet tranquil on sea and land. So she's a siren of sorts, kind of bardic, but more of a siren. Eclectic engineer. Often equipped with tinkering stuffs accompanied by many an oil stain, she's nothing short of inventive in mind and hand. A medkit and engineering satchel holds steadfast to a utility belt. When a healer is absent, she takes incentive to heal in a more tactile manner. Mavens, or Mavens, Mien. Dark auburn tresses whisk every which way, framing complacency and wit upon a youthful countenance. Beyond the sharpening of tongue, likewise remains the deathly puncture of steel, instructed for years in the art of subtlety and deathly endeavors. So, she is my rogue. She's my most original character, my oldest one, and I've been role-playing her for several years. We have one more profile to visit, and it's my horde, and she is a blood elf demon hunter. Okay, so her name is Ariadne. Her titles are Unsighted and Umbral, so she can't see. And she's also an artificer. Fellwoven Attercop, so again Attercop. And a little bit of background lore about demon hunters is that they kind of siphon in a power of a demon that they kill. And in WoW lore, the Aranasi demon has a spider-like essence about them. So Ariadne has spider-like traits about her. She's an adult. Her eye color is, well, it's pale green, but she's constantly wearing a blindfold. She's 5'7". She has a svelte body shape. She was born in Quel'Thalas. She is a nomadic resident, so she doesn't live exactly anywhere. She has a complacent or stoic physiognomy, and she has several upper ear piercings. Ari. Regaled by one's failures, little dwells in the demon huntress's heart. Complacent, indifferent, yet even so the faintest tinge of compassion. Beyond the etchings of Librans and scrutiny of diplomats remains the love for warfare fixed within her heart. Ashen locks pool amidst the small of her back. A willowy physique renders whisks of steel akin to silk, unsullied in technique. Lovely is she, a ruiner of knightly endeavors in the hearts of men. So, kind of an elusive, roguish type. Then her glances. Aranea and Suko, and they are twin glaives, so she has two glaives that she fights with. Crafted by the artificer presents a volatile poison from a spider's venom. But a flesh room. Scarring speckles her frame bountifully, rivaling her inky amalgam of etchings. So she's got lots of scars and tattoos. Panoply of practice. Witchery and martial artistry find themselves combined to one entity, her regalia catering to both practices. A masterful mien, an eye for tinsmithing, and a crafter's hand. She's an evident artificer. A tool belt clings to her waist. So she's kind of an engineer of sorts. Melodious pedipalps, a spinster's serenade of webworks and venom. The bardic artificer is bound to none other than the Aranasi demon. So sometimes when she is doing her spider-like combat, she also has a sort of a sing-songy bardic essence to it. And as a musician, I always like to incorporate that as much as I can. So that is all of my mostly fleshed out roleplay profiles. And I like to roleplay quite a bit. Just kind of story write. It's one of my favorite things. I'm also a DM for a D&D campaign, so truly writing is one of my absolute favorite hobbies. I greatly appreciate you stopping by today into my little nook of YouTube, and I certainly hope that you rest well, peacefully, and find yourself restfully awoken in the morning. Have a lovely evening. Goodbye.